I don't talk about this anymore. Not because I don't want to, but because I'm afraid people won't believe me. I can't forget what happened in that apartment, but I wish I could. It wasn't much, just a cheap, rundown one-bedroom on the edge of town. The building creaked and groaned, but I got used to it. The neighbors were quiet and I was content. But after what happened, I don't know if I'll ever feel safe in my own skin again. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to a faint noise. Tap, tap, tap. At first I thought I was dreaming, but then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. Clearer this time. I froze. The sound was coming from my bedroom door. I always lock my door before bed. I'm alone in the apartment. No roommates, no pets. But there it was. Tap, tap, tap. I tried to ignore it, to tell myself it was just the house settling or some other rational explanation. But then I heard it. The door handle turning. Slowly, deliberately. My heart stopped. Who was on the other side? I didn't move. I couldn't. My breath came shallow, but I forced myself to stay still. The handle twisted again. Click. The door creaked, but didn't open. Whoever was out there wasn't leaving. I could feel their presence. Then I heard it, breathing soft, slow, as if someone was standing right next to my bed, listening to me. My body went cold. I didn't dare look. Suddenly, the voice whispered, "I'm right here. I've always been right here." I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come. My heart hammered in my chest. Was it a prank? A nightmare? But no, there was something too real about the voice. Too close. The breathing grew louder, more ragged. It was right beside me. Then the figure spoke again, this time clearer. "Don't you recognize me?" The words echoed in my mind. Who was this? Why couldn't I see them? I felt like I was suffocating, trapped in my own bed. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the presence was gone. The footsteps retreated. The room was silent again. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what had just happened. I turned on the light, but the room was empty. No one was there. The door was still locked. Everything seemed normal, but then I saw it, a crumpled piece of paper on the floor near my bed. I picked it up, hands shaking. It was a simple note, written in neat handwriting. "I'm not the one who's been here. You've been here all along." What did that mean? My head spun, but it didn't stop there. As I looked down, I noticed something else. A photo. It was face down, lying at my feet. I picked it up, my hands trembling. It was a picture of me, standing in front of my bathroom mirror, smiling like I had countless times before. But something was wrong. In the reflection, there was a man. Thin, tall, with dark eyes. His face was blurry, like a shadow, but his presence was unmistakable. He was standing right behind me, in the reflection, staring at me. I couldn't breathe. I wasn't imagining this. I hadn't seen anyone in the apartment, but there he was, right there in the mirror. I turned the photo over, desperate to understand. Written on the back was the date, December 2019. That's when it hit me. I hadn't even moved into the apartment by then. I hadn't taken that photo. Someone else had. I don't know what it means. I don't know if the photo was taken before I arrived, or if it's something worse, that the figure had been in the apartment before me, waiting, watching. But I'm terrified. I moved out the next day. I couldn't get out of that apartment fast enough. But even now, when I'm alone, I feel like something is following me. I hear the soft tap, tap, tapping sometimes. And whenever I look in a mirror, I swear I can see that figure just behind me, waiting for me to recognize it. The worst part? I'm afraid I already do. I've never been able to forget the house at the end of the street. It had always been there, looming like a shadow, but I'd never paid it much attention, until one night when I had no choice but to. I was 16 when I first noticed something was wrong with the house. It was abandoned, sitting at the very edge of town, on a dead-end street that no one really drove down anymore. The house was old, decaying, the windows boarded up, and a rusty gate kept anyone from getting too close. It had always been an eyesore, but everyone in town had their own theories about it. Some said it was haunted, some claimed it was cursed, but whatever the story was, it was never discussed. That is, until my friends dared me to go inside. It was late, around midnight, when they brought it up. We were sitting in my basement, passing around a bottle of cheap vodka, when one of the guys, Tom, mentioned the house. "You scared?" he taunted. "Bet you can't go in there for 5 minutes." Everyone laughed, but I wasn't one to back down from a dare. So against my better judgment, I agreed. I wasn't the only one who thought something was off about that house, but I figured a few minutes in there wouldn't kill me. The worst thing that could happen was getting caught by a neighbor, or worse, the cops. We snuck down the street, the cold night air biting at our skin, and found the old house just as I remembered. Silent and still, like it had been for years. The gate was rusted shut, but the side door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, the creaking sound sending a shiver down my spine. Inside it was dark. The air was thick, musty, and smelled like decay. It wasn't the typical old house smell. It was something worse. I pulled my phone out for light, and the beam danced over the rotting walls and floorboards. The place had been abandoned for as long as I could remember, but something about it felt wrong. like it wasn't abandoned at all. The others hung back at the door, nervously watching, but I stepped inside, wanting to prove that I wasn't afraid. I moved through the hallway, my footsteps echoing unnervingly in the silence. It was just an old house, I told myself. Just an old, creepy house. But then I heard it, a soft scratching sound coming from upstairs. It stopped me in my tracks. I turned toward the staircase, but the stairs looked rickety, old and unsafe. I didn't want to go up, but curiosity got the best of me. Maybe it was an animal, something trapped in the attic? I could explain it away. I grabbed a piece of wood from the ground just in case and started up the stairs. Each step creaked under my weight. The scratching sound grew louder as I neared the top, and I was starting to regret my decision. The second floor was even darker than the first, and the scratching sound was now replaced by something worse, a low muttering voice, like someone was whispering under their breath. I moved toward the last room at the end of the hallway. The door was cracked open, and as I slowly pushed it, the air grew colder. Inside, the room was empty, except for a large dusty mirror standing against the wall. The voice stopped. Silence. I stared at the mirror, the reflection of the empty room staring back at me. But then, in the corner of the glass, I saw something move, a shadow. It was small, but it was there. Something darted across the room in the reflection, but when I looked over my shoulder, the room was still. I turned back to the mirror. The shadow was closer now. I took a step back, my heart racing. I was about to turn and leave when I saw it, a figure in the reflection, standing behind me, a man, thin and tall, with hollow eyes and a crooked smile. I spun around. No one. The room was empty, but in the mirror, the figure didn't move. My legs felt like jelly. I couldn't breathe, and the panic started to set in. My friends, why hadn't they come looking for me? I took a few unsteady steps backward, but the figure in the mirror followed. It moved with me, matching my every step. I turned to run, but just as I reached the door, the figure stepped forward. Out of the mirror, I screamed, but my voice didn't reach my friends downstairs. I was alone, trapped in the room with this thing that shouldn't exist. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut, trapping me inside. The last thing I remember was the figure's smile, growing wider, distorting, like it was ready to swallow me whole. I woke up outside the house. I don't know how I got there. I was lying on the grass, gasping for breath, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The house looked the same as it had before, but when I checked my phone, I noticed something strange. The date was all wrong. It was no longer the night I had gone inside. It was months later. I didn't know what had happened to the hours in between. I couldn't remember how I'd left the house or why the door had been open when I stumbled out. My friends never saw me enter the house, and they'd never heard my screams.